But first things first, for people who've never even seen a WATA game before, a WATA label, the grading at WATA is broken up into two components. The first big number here, right, the 9.6, the numerical grade that you see only refers to the case itself, the box itself. Today's guide is going to be focused on modern style DVD case games, so that numerical grade is going to be considering are there any dents, divots, indents, marks, cracks, any kind of issue to the cover art on the game that you can see or the casing itself. That grade is also going to consider the alignment of the cover art top and bottom. Is it well centered? Was it placed in nicely? It's going to look at everything it can that is not related to the actual seal itself. Then you have the little letter grade. On this game, you can see it got an A+. That grade relates to the seal. And that grade is actually going to be looking at your seal. Are there any rips, tears, nicks, scratches, anything wrong with the cellophane, the shrink wrap, the seal on the game that would detract from what you'd consider factory perfect? If you learn nothing else today, just take with you that the box grade and the seal grade are graded separately, and that's why online you can see games that are a 9.8, yet it has a rip in the seal. The seal and the box are graded separately. Remember that. I do just want to give you a little bit more baseline knowledge about the WATA scale, and then we'll move on to actual examples of what you need to look for and how you can consider if your modern game is worth sending in. The WATA scale does go from 10 all the way down to 0.5, but realistically, for modern games, you want to try and concentrate yourself around the 9.0 to 9.8 range. Once you start getting lower on the scale, the types of damage is allowed, the types of damage you're going to see become more obvious, more noticeable, and more plentiful. In the 7 and below range, you don't have to be any kind of video game expert. A lot of the damage is clearly, easily noticeable. The 8 to 9 range really isn't that bad, but if we're talking about modern specifically, and especially if you get up to something as new as Nintendo Switch, almost everything is going to be an 8.0 at minimum, so you really want to try and push up the conditional scale if you're sending stuff in for grading. For the seal rating, you can see that it starts at A++ and goes all the way down to C. And the issue is, and what trips up a lot of people, is that you go from A++ to A+ to A. So by the time you get to an A seal, which it looks pretty good, right? We've all been taught that if you get an A on your report card, you're doing pretty damn good. But on this WATA scale, if you're already at the A grade, well, you're one step away from the very middle of the scale. A++ truly is like a very nice case fresh, perfect type of game. A+ will allow for various minor degrees of wear, scratches, maybe even a very small nick or two. And by the time you get down to the A seal rating, you're probably going to see obvious types of wear, including rips or tears on most of the games. And again, if we're talking about modern games here, you really don't want your game to fall into the B+ or below. That means you have obvious, perhaps multiple rips, one big rip, scratches, tears almost everywhere on the game, and it probably isn't going to present very well or grade very well. Even something like a 9.2A on Nintendo Switch is probably going to end up being a below average grade. So now that you are a WATA scale expert, let me show you some actual forms of damage that you just want to avoid completely right off the bat. The big issue with grading these DVD style games, with buying these DVD style games, is if I just show you the game front and back like this, you have no idea what kind of condition this is. And unfortunately, this is how most games are presented online. So this game right here, you cannot submit for grading because it has one big piece of wear on it right here. Now, if you can make it out on the camera here, this divot right here actually punctures the cover art itself. So you can see in the light that it pushes inwards like that. That actually did rip the cover art of the game as well. It is still fully factory sealed, but with this puncture mark, the best I could hope for is maybe an 8.0. WATA will destroy this game for that type of wear. The next very obvious thing you need to look for is any kind of cracks, breaks, anything in your actual case. Again, this game looks nice, right? Front and back, you can't see anything. But on the side here, unfortunately, the game case itself is cracked. There's a piece inside that's loose. This, again, is very severe damage to a modern game. I don't know how bad this would be if I sent it into WATA. I genuinely assume it would be something like a 7. This is a very bad example of cracking or case damage, but even if you were to see any kind of hairline crack when you examine the sides of your case, that will also destroy your grade with WATA. And that is the exact same for cracks in any kind of jewel case games. PS1, Sega Saturn, if you have a crack, you can expect your grade to plummet very quickly. And on the Black Ops here, I I want to show you an obvious type of rip that you really don't want to see on your sealed game either. So up here on the corner of this game, you can see there's a little piece of the cellophane folded upwards. It's not a very big rip, right? A small hole in the wrap there. That alone is going to take you down to the A level at minimum. You will not A+ with this, and worst case scenario, you might even fall into the B+ if you also have a bunch of scuffing or scratching to the rest of the game. And that's what I said about the A grade looking good on the label, but in reality, there is a lot of leeway as to what can be expected in the A seal level. Now, for the rest of the games shown here, I will be submitting these to WATA Games, so once they come back, we'll have the actual answers as to what grade they got. For now, I'm just going to show you guys the estimates of where I think these games are going to fall on the scale. I'm going to try and show you the 9.0 to the 9.8 grade. Of course, with any kind of grading scale, with any grading company, it is always possible that you're going to send something in that you think is a 9.4, but you actually get a 9.2. Or you send something in that you think is a 9.0 and you get a 9.2. The best thing you can hope for, the best thing you can learn with any grading scale is how to be within one level on your estimate. So this Mario Party 10 here is an example of what I think will grade a 9.0 on the scale. On the front of the game here, there is a small divot there. It is not enough to actually break the cover art, but it is noticeable. On the back of the game here, you can see right here, there's another pretty decent divot. Again, it does not break the cover art or anything, but it is indenting the game, as well as little various marks, like right here you can see just very small indents into the cellophane that might be affecting the case itself. It's hard to say with a lot of those. And again, a little bit over here as well, right? You can just see there's a little bit of indenting there in the case, in the wrap. There's also a bit of indenting from the actual wheel of the disc here where it sits, and you can see there's some pretty bad scratching right here. This game will probably get an A+ seal rating, but there's also just minor scuffs and scratches on the front that are very hard to show in the camera. So you don't have to have a rip in order to get an A. If it's very scuffed up, if it's very scratched up, you can still get an A seal rating even if there are no rips. Overall, my estimate for this game is a 9.0 A. And like I said, in about 3 months, I'll have all of these games back and we can see the actual results and we can see how predictable is the WATA scale. Next up here is an example that I hope is a 9.2. So where the manual sits on a lot of these cases is actually hollow. So you can see there's a slight indent there of the manual tab that is pushed into the cover art. And that is the same on both the top and the bottom of the case. It is very slight, but you have to be looking for that when you're assessing these. On the front of the game here, you can see there's a lot of what almost looks like writing indents or something on the case. It's over here as well. It's hard to say if this is going deep enough to affect the cover art or if this is just the wrap grade, but I always do try to prepare for the worst, so I'm just going to assume that this is going to hurt the actual grade of the game. On the back here, there's a little bit of a snag in the wrap, a little bit of a mark on the case, so that's going to affect the grade. And then there are just a couple of very tiny, very minor indents that's honestly hard for me to even capture on the camera. For the seal grade, unfortunately, this does have a little rip up here, if you can see it. Might be a little bit hard to pick up in the camera, but there's a little rip right here as well on games, and this is very common type of wear on modern DVD style games. There's a lot of scratching going down this side of the case. You can probably see it there in the light. Many games you find are going to be scratched along this edge right here. Also, make sure to check your spines. Again, it hides a lot of scratches that people might just completely not think about when submitting games. So this will for sure get an A seal rating. Hopefully it doesn't get a B+. When we get into these 9.0, 9.2, 9.4 type of grades, the amounts of difference in wear or the types of wear gets very nuanced as to why this one will fall to a 9 and why this one will fall to a 9.2. And if you miss anything when you're trying to get something like a 9.2, 9.4, you will just fall down the scale to a 9. So as you saw in this game, the types of wear that it has are pretty minimal overall, but there's a lot of slight pieces of wear that do just kind of add up as you go, oh, there's a small thing here, small thing there, small thing there. Ideally, this gets a 9.4. I'd be super happy with that. I'm expecting a 9.2 A on it. We'll see what happens. So now let's move up the scale again to what I think is a 9.4, has a chance at 9.6. So on the front of the game, the only really noticeable thing is this light indent right here. You really do have to be using direct light to see it. You can see right there, it's slightly pushing into the art, slightly pushing into the casing of the game. Again, here on the side, another very slight scratch that's pushing in. Honestly, they might just consider this to be cellophane damage, which is why I'm hoping that this game also has a chance at 9.6. On the back again here, there's some very minor marks in the cellophane in the case. You can see that these two right here do push slightly inwards, but very small, very minor. But once we get up to this level on the scale, I do just want to point out as well that at the bottom of the case here, you can see that the cover art is falling out of the protective film. The alignment of the art is too far down. If we go to the top of the case, the gap here is going to be slightly too big. So when we're talking about the 9.6, the 9.8, and especially the 10.0 level, they are taking that into consideration. Now, I'm really hoping that this does hit 9.6, but my official guess for it is 9.4 A+. And finally, let's just talk about the 9.6, 9.8, A+, A++ level, the tippy top of the scale. Realistically, it is very, very hard to hit 9.8 A++. That is literally going to be a factory fresh, brand new game. And no, just because you went and bought your game at the store does not mean you're going to hit 9.8 A++. When we get into that type of level, any kind of handling damage, manufacturing damage, anything that happened from when the employee put it on the shelf, from when the employee shuffled around the box of games, it is not simply as easy as walk to the store, buy a new game, get the best grade. Here we have what is literally a factory fresh game. This is from a distributor. On the actual seal itself, there is next to nothing noteworthy to point out. When we're getting into this level of nuance and detail here, I don't even know if you guys can see it on the camera. Little bit of indenting. I lost it in the light there. Right there. There's a little bit of indenting going vertically. Right there, kind of on his mouth. Something like that is going to start being taken into consideration if we're talking about getting an A++, 9.8 type of grade. Like I was talking about earlier, look at the spine of the game here, right? You can see little scuffing marks as you go up. These alone are very likely going to keep this game out of the A++ level. I can only assume there's going to be a little bit of micro scratching on the edge here. You can see it. And this is, like I said, from a distributor. This game was never on a shelf. This game was kept stored for its entire life. And you can see the micro scratching here that very likely will keep this game out of the A++ level. On the back of the game again, there is, of course, nothing noteworthy to point out. If we're talking about that 9.8 level, it's honestly going to be damn near perceptually perfect. So this Saw game right here, I am really hoping is a 9.8 A+ level game. I'll be sending them in right away. As soon as I get them back, I will update the video with the results and re-upload so you guys can see exactly how they did fall on the scale. You can see exactly how predictable the WATA scale is. If the video helped you out, make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe if you like this kind of content about graded video games, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.